Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Humanitarian Horizons, Christina DiArcangelo Unveiled. And with me today, I'm so excited to have a colleague and a friend on with me, Kelly, who is going to speak with us today about some of the amazing things she's working on. And I think it'll be very clear as we continue to talk about these topics, how we're connected. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. I appreciate being here, and I'm looking forward to having a great chat.
Wonderful. So, Kelly, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your background, what you're doing now, where you're located? That would be fantastic.
Sure. So my name is Kelly Markey. I'm a sixth generation Indian born in South Africa. I migrated to New Zealand over 30 years ago and then to Australia. I'm married to an Australian. I work in medical IT as a consultant. I love my day job. And during lockdown, I kind of dabbled with, finding what was going to give me harmony in that season. And I discovered that I was a writer. I wrote my first memoir in lockdown. It took the world by storm. And then I was inundated with requests to write more books. And I wrote my second book. My first one's called Don't Just Fly. And that's basically my memoir with self-help tools. It has 25 self-help tools. And then I wrote the second one, which is Making Sage Decisions. This is helping individuals, organizations on a global scale, just the world to make better decisions. This was, again, extremely well received with nominations and all of that. And while I was on the top of the world, just grasping all of this and taking it in, also breaking more glass ceilings, unfortunately, I lost my brother to suicide, and none of us saw it coming. And while I grappled with that pain and still in shock in so many ways, I decided to use my voice and my pen, and it brought a layer of healing. But I think what really spoke to me was the fact that the last few conversations I had with my brother was on video call, and he just seemed to mask what he was really feeling. And I didn't understand the magnitude of pain and, how he was grappling with so much, but not coming forward with it.
Yeah, it's really tough to have a sibling that's suffering silently and you have no idea. In your case, you had no idea until what
It was too late.
Right. I was trying to phrase it, and not seem much dramatic, because my podcast isn't about drama, but obviously our meeting was, I feel, humanitarian, obviously in nature, but also the fact that we share a lot of commonality in the sense that we've had family members that have suffered from mental health. And my brother, as you know, suffered from bipolar disease and schizophrenia. He, to the best of my knowledge, had never attempted to commit suicide. But my mother, who also suffered from mental health, bipolar disease, mania, MDD, PTSD, agoraphobia, she tried to commit suicide 4 times in my life, and both have now passed. So
Wow.
I too have a book about mental health, and mine was a memoir similar to what you started off with. I'm a baby compared to you, though. Like you're amazing. You've been working so hard and diligently, and you've really paved the way for people like us. I feel like I'm a newbie because this was my first book, but writing my book was obviously partial memoir, but self-help. And there's a large focus of mental health in the book, as well as about the crime that my mom had, been a victim of, unfortunately, elder abuse. And as I'm learning more and more about elder abuse, I'm finding that a lot of the elders that are attacked financially, especially, are incapacitated at some points of their lives with mental health impairments. So they're the perfect storm for someone to take advantage of them. And I didn't realize the depth of elder abuse until it happened, to my own mother. And now, like, my eyes are wide open. The mental health aspect, I lived with that my whole life, trying to manage my family situation. My father, incidentally, did not have any mental health issues, maybe some anxiety, but that was it. So it was kind of like him and I bookending our family, watching all this stuff as I grew up and as I've become an adult and I've been working in the corporate settings, I immediately identify mental health issues. And I just think there's such a lack of support out there for people. The fact that your brother didn't go and seek help. I mean, you talked to him and he hid it so well. And that's one of the problems with mental health patients is that they hide it so well. And they can easily convince physicians. I've watched it with my brother and my mother that they're not as bad as they really are. Because like you mentioned early, it's a mask and you don't know really.
Yes, I'm sorry to hear, what's happened to your brother and your mom. Yeah, it is a huge gap, I think, that, humanity needs to step up to change the landscape for sure.
And not to be afraid to talk about it, right? There's such stigma surrounding it. Like, for example, and I'm not knocking other therapeutic diseases, right? But there's all these days, there's Alzheimer's Day, there's this type of cancer day, this type of, right? All these different therapeutic area days. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that June, because it's June now, June is Mental Health Awareness for Men. I don't see a whole heck of a lot being posted about mental health awareness for men. Even last month, May, was mental health awareness, just straight mental health awareness. And obviously affinity patient advocacy. I know you saw all the articles coming out pretty much every day, every other day, all the posts about mental health because, we supported my brother and my mother with their mental health issues through my nonprofit. But there's been several patients that come our way, especially patients that have suffered from COVID or patients who lost family members due to COVID, the isolation. You brought that up when you came on about, well, I started writing my book because we were in lockdown in Australia. And what else was I going to do? So I started writing a book, not realizing that, wow, I can actually write a book and I'm an award-winning author now because of it. You used isolation and the lockdown for strength, but not everybody did. And so we don't talk about it enough. I mean, wouldn't you agree that people don't talk about this stuff enough?
Absolutely. It's a taboo subject. And even suicide, they don't unravel it. And sadly, stats reveal to us that there's almost one male suicide per minute globally. That is staggering. And most men do not want to talk about the trauma that they're going through mentally.
Yes.
Because, yeah.
Yes. I mean, I can't speak on who this person is in my life, but there's someone that I'm very close to. And this person is undiagnosed bipolar. This person is a male. And I have tried to help him, kind of navigate some of these things that are happening, especially when he's symptomatic. But there's that denial. And he's also in a race that's non-Caucasian. And that race is they stigmatize mental health. It doesn't happen. And so he's got a lot against him. And he's also kind of like one of those guys that's like a tough guy. You know what I mean? So it's all a persona. And everybody thinks he's like this really nice guy because when he's in the mania part, he's on that high, right? And so people see that high, they very rarely see the low. The people who see the low are, those that are the most close to him. And it's his family who also suffers from a lot of mental health. So, and I've helped some of those family members, right? They've come to me, to help them. And so it's been very challenging and difficult. And even my son has some mental health issues. And we figured that out when he was about 5. The school, had said, we think we should have him tested. Do you agree? And yes, I've been seeing stuff since he was 2 years old. And a lot of times people think you're paranoid as a mom. When you see stuff, you're like, well, is it really happening? Or is she just thinking this is worse than it really is? Well, I'm a researcher, as you know. So, and I didn't open up the advocacy firm until Christian was much older when my dad had passed. Right. So that was 2015 that I opened that up. So it's not like I was jockeying to make it seem like my son, there was something wrong with my son. There was nothing wrong with him. There were just some things that were happening. And sure enough, we got the diagnosis. And so I constantly work with him as well to keep him, non-anxious and, stable. And he's doing extremely well. And, luckily, the school district we are in, he has social support and he has an IEP. And so I'm very blessed, right? But not everybody does this with their children. They grow up in silence. They don't talk about it. And to your earlier point with your brother, this was something he had for a long time and he never told anybody about it.
Yeah, there was lots of other layers as well that contributed to where he was, but I think he was grappling with a lot that he didn't let on, and he just put on a front that he was okay when he was not, and he didn't have an outlet. I think what I got from what you just mentioned is the fact that, yeah, you having that clinical background makes a difference. It definitely gives you that sharper eagle eye, and not everyone has that. For a lay person, someone who doesn't have that clinical background, it's hard for them to grapple that, something's going on in the background, or they just take it for granted that the person's having a bad day, they'll bounce back. And the other thing I think is a huge contributing factor is the citizens that are born in a developing world already have an unfair shake. And, I see it living here in Australia, and I work in medical IT. I design medical systems for the disabled and, all other facets of health. And I see what we have in comparison to, where I come from in South Africa. There's nothing. And we need to start in terms of, making that reform with policy and legislation and all of that. But where do you even begin when there's so much corruption in a place like South Africa? So it's really a difficult situation. So stemming in from that, the next book that I'm working on is an anthology which has 20 authors from around the globe, and it's entitled Echoes of Humanity, where we actually look at lived experience and how our lived experience impacts the world. And more fundamentally, we're looking at the fact that, we can't change the world, when there's so much corruption, like I mentioned, in South Africa and other parts of the world. What we can do is change ourselves and make a difference, within the people that we are in circle with and the lives that we touch. That's where we can begin. And if we all do that, if we change one person and that one person, touches another and another, that can make a difference.
Absolutely. And I think there's a tremendous call to action also for the fact that there's not a lot of funding for mental health.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's not recognized. There isn't any legislation truly behind it. There's not enough programs. But lastly, there isn't enough funding for this, right? And so, we even see, and I'm not trying to make this a political discussion, but even in the crime sector, right? And a lot of the people who committed crimes who end up in prison, many of them have mental health issues. My brother was in prison. I wrote about that in the book because I started the book in 2010, and my brother ended up in prison in 2012. And it was a couple of months after I moved back from California to Pennsylvania because my dad had come out of remission again, and we thought potentially he might pass away. He ended up not passing until 15. However, my brother committed a crime, went to state prison, and he got charged with felonies. He brandished a gun when he was at a convenience store because he got in a fight with a FedEx driver, and then he showed the gun. He was very far away, but still the point is you can't do that, right? He showed the gun. This is post 9/11 as well. So terroristic threats and things of that nature are very prevalent when you do stuff like that. And so he got charged. And we brought in, because I was working with the attorney that we ended up helping him hire because he didn't have a lot of money. And I brought in the fact that when my brother was 17 years old, when my mom tried to commit suicide the first time in my life and my brother's, he found her. My brother found her. So, and the fact that he already had bipolar, we knew that he had bipolar. We didn't know that he was schizophrenic until he was dying from COVID. That's when I figured that out, talking to the physician. So it was not looked upon as a rationale for his behavior. He had also just lost his baby. His girlfriend at the time had a stillbirth. So all these things compounded. He brandishes a gun. He gets locked up. My brother did 3 years in state. And I'll tell you, Kelly, when he came out, never the same. The things that he saw in prison, there were murders. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it or make it seem like, but it's true. And so like even the crime that was committed against my mother, one of them was my family member. It was my brother's oldest son who has extreme mental health issues, has been addicted to drugs, has been in and out of prison. We don't do anything to help that either. And so we wonder why there's all these people locked up. Well, it's because they have mental health issues and we have nothing in place to help them. I mentioned to you before we came on, I was talking to a detective yesterday about something that's going on. And he mentioned to me that there's not enough mental health support. A detective. And it was unsolicited. We were just talking about things and he brought it up. So there's a large, massive issue as it relates to mental health. And we need to stop closing our eyes to it, stop turning a blind eye to it, and do something about it. And that, I believe, is what you're doing, Kelly. And so are many of the other people that are working with you on the book. Obviously, you know where I sit in the mental health space. We need to do better and we need to help these people.
Absolutely. All for it. Yes. Because too many lives are being claimed by people being complacent.
Yes. Well, Kelly, believe it or not, we're already at the end of our time. These are short podcasts. I would love to have you on again in August or September, obviously, because you have a big book launch coming up, which is in New York. I'm so excited to be a part of that. I would love to have you on again so that we can talk about some of the things that maybe have changed since our podcast.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I really hope that, people get out of this podcast from us today, the call to action. I mean, just to you said, your point earlier, if we can help one person, just one person. And so if everybody could just help one person and just be a little bit kinder, to people, just being kind
Absolutely.
is helpful.
Yeah, just be human. I think also the thing that I noticed is since I've become an author, there's so much of envy and, so much of negative energy. And I wonder why, I'm just trying to enhance humanity. Why don't people just lift each other up? Why people can't, do a good turn for someone?
Yeah. I mean, I know that you saw my Facebook post on LinkedIn. The people who hacked my private Facebook are using me, Christina DiArcangelo, and they're pretending I now am a Bitcoin trader. I have worked,
Wow.
Kelly, you know how hard I've worked, right? We've talked about what you've done and what I've done in life and the sacrifices we've made for our careers and our families and all these things. Like, we're good people. And when you said to me, as I've come up, well, you didn't use those terms, but, as I've risen to become a successful author, there's all this negativity and it's happening to me right now. It's like, what? It makes you wonder, why do I work so hard, for someone to steal from me and take from me and diminish me as a human when I give myself to everyone. I try to help people. And it's, again,
Exactly.
We go back to the mental health issues. Obviously, these people have mental health issues. It's not normal to hack into someone's Facebook. It's not normal to try and steal from people she's connected to or people that you can now connect to because you're pretending to be me, to the point where they took a picture of my deceased brother and posted it earlier this week, pretending to be me, my brother. Yeah. So it's callous. It's my son. They did something with my son a week prior to that, exploitation. I can't even, that's another topic for us to discuss, but I just had to bring it up because it's happening right now to me and it's been happening to you.
Yes, we need a better world and
we absolutely do
that together, change the world one person at a time.
I agree. It's kind of like I'm envisioning, like my painting above with your arms out. That's what we need to do. We need to be more loving and hugging and caring. And I'm not trying to be wishy-washy, but that's what people need. They need more love and support rather than negativity and anger and violence. There's so much violence in the world.
Absolutely. I'm so glad we connected.
Me too, Kelly. And thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it with the time difference, you being in Australia. At least we're not talking at 2 a.m.
That's okay. Thank you.
Like the last time. But thank you so much for being on. I so appreciate you and everything you're doing. And thank you so much for really giving a voice to mental health. I so appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too. Keep up the good work. And
thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone. And thank you again for tuning in to Humanitarian Horizons. Christina DiArcangelo and Vail.